Kenneth Walker wins Super Bowl MVP at the perfect time as he's due for a new contract. We react to Super Bowl 60 and get into the 2026 fantasy outlooks for the Seahawks and Patriots on today's episode of Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Fantasy Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. I'm one of your co-hosts, Michelle Magdziuk, and when I'm not doing this, I'm a researcher and fantasy analyst with NFL Network.
And I'm your other co-host, Vinnie Iyer. When I'm not doing this, I'm writing about NFL fantasy and betting for sportingnews.com.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The winter games are on, and there's no better way to follow them than with a bet on FanDuel. FanDuel, play your game. All right, we are officially done with the 2025 season. The Super Bowl went about how we thought it would. It was not a very fun one. There was a couple moments where we got some action out of the Patriots, but mostly the Seahawks shut down that Patriots offense. Very much a defensive game. The Patriots did everything they could for a long time to stop the Seahawks, but just couldn't overcome their offense. Now, Kenneth Walker brings home Super Bowl MVP. He doesn't get into the end zone, but has a monster game on the ground with 135 rushing yards and 27 carries, adds another 26 yards through the air. So, I mean, this couldn't have been a better time, right? He's a free agent now, unrestricted free agent. So maybe the Seahawks franchise tag him and figure that out that way. But most likely he's going to get asked to pay pretty big now that, especially now that he has that MVP on his resume. Do you think that he will get paid big time in free agency? And do you think it'll be the Seahawks that do it?
Yeah, one thing they kept mentioning on the broadcast, well, maybe a couple times, was the fact why Kenneth Walker is not an every down back. And it made a lot of sense when they came up with it, is the fact that they want to keep Sam Darnold protected. And they don't trust Kenneth Walker when he's in the game to pass block. Or he's an okay receiver, but there were some passes he should have got that would have made his day huge. Like he would have had 200 yards from scrimmage had he caught those balls. I think we were like 2 or 3 targets where he should have caught them. So he did his best, right, on the shorter passes. He did come through, but he was also the only outlet for their entire offense that was working, other than a few passes to Cooper Kupp. Jaxon Smith-Njigba had to leave for a while with the concussion protocol and be checked. So that kind of hurt his numbers in the second half. So it had to be all about Walker. And the Seahawks were in position to just keep the ball away from the Patriots for most of the game. So they could continue that. They took the 3-0 lead, and the 9-0 lead, then the 12-0 lead, and the 19-0 lead. So it just kept building, and the Patriots didn't have any answers until it was too late. I mean, they figured it out in the fourth quarter with a couple touchdowns, but it was well in hand, and they made some mistakes along the way. So they could run Walker all the time. The Patriots didn't put them in that odd position of needing to throw and be more one-dimensional, and that didn't happen. But Walker, as we said, had high volume. But I'm not sure this high volume will continue with Zach Charbonnet been healthy. I'm just saying that because, look, they didn't show any indication of that during the regular season. It was a pretty even split. Charbonnet was used a lot of the passing situations as well as the red zone when they might be looking to have that run-pass option. So I'm not sure what you're going to get from Kenneth Walker in free agency. I'm not sure how much Seattle's going to value him. But I think, honestly, his best place is back there because I think it's a good 1-2 punch with Charbonnet. You know, it's going to be run-heavy offense. Maybe he goes to the Raiders as a backup. Maybe follows Clinton Kubiak to Ashton Genty and they form a new 1-2 punch. I don't know. But I think the problem is he's just a little bit limited. He's a very explosive, quick back, but he's not, I would say, complete. And you need to really support him in most cases.
Yeah, I think he can be a complete back. I think someone will pay him as such. And I think it probably has to be the Seahawks now that Charbonnet went down with a torn ACL so late in the season. I mean, it wasn't until the divisional round that happened. So who knows if he'll be back at all next year, let alone any time to start the year. So if he's back there, he's going to get a lot of work and his fantasy value will definitely be looking up. And then if he leaves and goes somewhere where he can get the full workload and not split with Charbonnet, that will be huge too. We'll get into more Walker talk in a little bit here when we go through the Seahawks future, but let's continue talking about this Super Bowl. You mentioned JSN didn't do much. He was shut down. I mean, yeah, he had to leave the game, for a little bit in the concussion protocol, but he had 10 targets in that game still, only 4 receptions for 27 yards. Gonzalez played out of his mind. Christian Gonzalez made some amazing pass breakups in that game, just played really, really great defense overall. It was JSN's worst game of the year efficiency wise, and then third worst game of the year in terms of receiving yards. And I mean, 2 of those 3 playoff games, he had fewer than 30 receiving yards. Kind of interesting there with that. But he was so good all year long that we can't be too worried about it next year.
Yeah, and teams are definitely changing their strategy. They were trying to say, hey, we'll stop him. You beat us with your other guys. Let's see if you can do it. And these teams did it. They used the running game, or this team did it with the running game and then throwing to different guys, right? Getting some key gains at different times. The Rashid Shaheed downfield connection was a little bit off in that game, but you had Cooper Kupp underneath. And how about AJ Barner? Like, we were so on, everyone was on, and for good reason. Like, he was right there with Harold Fannin, right? As a Senior Bowl darling, Elijah Arroyo. But then things didn't quite happen. He was banged up, and he didn't get on the field because AJ Barner was just more reliable all around. Now, I don't know if I would go look at him as a fantasy option. Like, I would figure the Seahawks have to do something to get some receiving help. Rashid Shaheed is a free agent after the trade from the Saints, so they might have to make an upgrade there. Cooper Kupp, who knows how much he has left in the tank. You'd think they'd go after somebody there, and maybe Arroyo will be a bigger factor if he shows a little bit more athleticism and health and kind of reliability in camp. But AJ Barner has been pretty reliable here for Sam Darnold. I don't think I realized he had more than 50 catches on this season. Now, I don't know if he can have a big breakout season, but he definitely has the talent. Like, he's a very physical receiver. They used him in like some Travis Kelce plays. So I'm going to watch AJ Barner, see what this offense develops like. But Darnold seems to have a lot of trust in him after we look at JSN as his favorite target.
Yeah, Barner had a really solid game there yesterday. And yeah, he had the second most receptions on the Seahawks on the season and second most receiving touchdowns as well. So might have to be in consideration for a late round pick next year. Now, on the other side of the ball, we mentioned the Patriots offense just couldn't get going. Drake Maye ended up throwing 2 touchdowns, but it took forever to finally get the first one. Long touchdown to Mack Hollins. That was exciting. Mack Hollins hit his overs for those who took it. We liked Hollins in this game. He led the Patriots in receiving yards. But yeah, I mean, just overall, this offense wasn't moving, right? And the run game did absolutely nothing. Luckily, I mean, we were talking up Trey Henderson all week. He hit most of his overs. I mean, he hit his overs in his carries. He hit his overs in rushing yards. He hit his over in scrimmage yards. The issue is it still was not much whatsoever. They did not get him involved enough, and we're relying, again, too much on Stevenson, who wasn't doing anything either.
Yeah, they just didn't kind of push the issue a little bit, and they kind of stuck with what their game plan was until the late in the fourth quarter. And we also said throw deep and expand, and they did to Hollins. And all of a sudden, they got a little spark, and then it faded away quickly with the Drake Maye turnovers, including the defensive touchdown. So it was a struggle. Now Stephon Diggs has to worry about some off the field stuff. I don't know what this Cardi B drama is doing as well and what his mindset is. He said after the game he'd like to be back, but he said it's not up to me. So he could easily be gone here from New England. It would make a lot of sense for the Patriots. There's 2 positions they could target at number 31 overall. They could look at a wide receiver. There's a lot of guys that they could take at that spot. But they could also look at an offensive lineman, right? Either to play right tackle, maybe kick Morgan Moses somewhere inside, or you play that right tackle potential left guard to replace Jared Wilson and help Will Campbell, right? So there's different things that you can look at here with the Patriots. But overall, look, I think you're going to see some changes. I don't know if they can trust an offense moving forward where Mack Hollins is your biggest deep threat and Pop Douglas has to make plays in the Super Bowl. They screamed that they needed receivers, and this game really exposed that.
It did. All right. Let's hop into the future outlooks for both of these teams, the Seahawks and the Patriots. We'll get in a little bit deeper on these players, where we expect them to go next year and who we'll be targeting and not. We'll get to that right after a quick break.
All right, this episode, Locked On Fantasy Football, is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Now, I love football, but I also love the winter games. They're officially here. And if you like anything that we like, then you're looking into the events you only get to see on the biggest stage every 4 years. And that's why following the winter games on FanDuel just makes sense, from medal counts to individual events to finding your angle on the sports you care about most. FanDuel gives you more ways to stay connected on the action. The drama of curling matches that start slow and somehow get intense fast. I was watching some mixed doubles. USA game against Sweden was very intense. Good action to get on there. Then we will have the puck drop for the men's hockey tournament on Thursday. Hockey games that just feel a little different right from the opening face-off with stars such as Austin Matthews in there. And then don't forget about the niche events. They become must-watch, such as short track speed skating, when you're fully locked into the competition. Winter games are on, and there's no better way to follow them than with FanDuel. FanDuel, play your game. All right, before we get into the future of the Seahawks as the reigning Super Bowl champions here in 2026, don't forget, it is 2026, and we're here for you all the time, year round, to give you fantasy insight. We'll have a lot, of course, on free agency, draft, get you caught up on everything that happens. Thanks for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen. And thanks for helping us make Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. The Everydayer Club is made just for you to help support the show and bring it to you year round. It's a great deal for you. It's just $5 a month or $50 a year. We'll get you exclusive Discord access where you can talk to us and get some advice as you're getting ready for the draft. So look for that as we get closer and closer to the season. This is the place to be because we're here all year round to help you dominate your fantasy leagues. It's really easy to join the Everydayer Club today. Just go to lockedonfantasyfootball.supercast.com. You can find out how to sign up. Just a quick click away from doing that. So really appreciate that if you can do that. And we would love to talk to you year round here only on Locked On Fantasy Football. All right, Michelle, let's look at the Seahawks' future. We talked a little bit about Kenneth Walker. We talked a little bit about A.J. Barner. JSN. Now, we talked about JSN before the Super Bowl after he won Offensive Player of the Year. Do you still trust him despite some of these playoff things as a top 3 pick, or do you slide him a little bit more to where he was the year before, like 8 to 10?
Yeah, I don't think it necessarily has to do with his playoff performances that I don't want to maybe go top 3. He had a great year, very, very consistent. But there's just other guys that, like, when you're looking at his total scoring this year, it was at 17.7 points per game in half PPR. Guys who scored more than that this year among running backs and wide receivers were CMC, Jonathan Taylor, Bijan Robinson, Puka Nacua, Jahmyr Gibbs, and Devin Achane. I mean, JSN didn't score all that more than James Cook on a point per game level. So I just don't know if that's top 3 worthy, especially considering, like, this is the best season we can imagine him having next year, right? 163 targets. Sam Darnold was on point, almost 1,800 yards. He had double digits receiving touchdowns. So he can't expect it to get better. You would expect it to probably come down a little bit, especially with the change at OC. Maybe they add more weapons. So I'm definitely on the Bijan Robinson side, Jahmyr Gibbs ahead of him. And then I think after that, I'm still going to go with Jamar Chase ahead, probably for my wide receiver 1. And then it's really close between Puka and him as that next guy at wide receiver. But like Nacua still has room to grow. I feel like, well, Jaxon Smith-Njigba, maybe not so much. So he's going to be a top 5 guy, and I'm fine with the pick, but I don't think I can get him into the top 3.
Yeah, I mean, he is very consistent. It's really hard to develop a season as consistent as he had, and I think it caught up to him at the end. I mean, he was very productive, and then the playoffs, you saw him shut down a few times. He had only really one really bad game in the regular season against the Vikings, and then he had a couple more of those in the playoffs. So JSN, again, he's not necessarily the go-to touchdown scorer, so that also hurts. Like, that can fluctuate a little bit there as well. But yeah, you can game plan to take him out of the game. And we're now really help. They got somebody to help here because Cooper Kupp is just, look, he's limited. When they didn't have Jason in the game for a while, the Patriots really did not care about who was at wide receiver in that game. So that's the question mark, right? I mean, what do you do with Shaheed? What do you do with Kupp? Do you bring him back? He's on the other side at 30. He's clearly slowing down. You can see that. He's not the same takeover game receiver he once was with the Rams just 5 years ago. So I don't know, again, how much I want to invest highly in Jason. I still think he's a top 10 pick. But you're right. All those running backs, I think Puka and Jamar Chase, don't forget, some guys could rebound big time that were reliable, like a Justin Jefferson. I'm not saying it will happen, but don't forget about those guys on the radar because things could change here. We know in the offseason that make that player a little bit more appealing. So just watch it. Again, it's going to be really hard to duplicate those numbers for JSN. So he can only go down, right? I mean, I don't think he's going to move up and overtake Puka. He's probably going to slide down as the better bet here.
And I'll say with Kenneth Walker, right now in consensus rankings, I mean, it's so early, but for running backs and half PPR, Walker is sitting at running back 18. If he re-signs with the Seahawks, I mean, he's going to have to be ranked inside the top 12, I think, because without Charbonnet for at least half the season, I would assume he's going to get so much work, and who knows how fast Charbonnet can even get back and be good enough to get actual playing time. But Walker, these last 6 games of the year, including the playoffs, averaged 21 touches per game and 128 scrimmage yards per game, scored 5 touchdowns during that span. Well, 3 of those touchdowns did come in one game, but still 4 straight games with at least 100 scrimmage yards. He's only 25 years old. I think he has it in him as long as he gets the touches, right? And then the goal line work. And that's what he was missing out on this year with Charbonnet and him basically splitting 50-50 and then them ending up back-to-back and average scoring with Charbonnet running back 28 and Walker at 29. But next year, if he stays and he gets this full backfield, he's got to be a top 12 guy, I think, in my rankings.
Yeah, let's just watch what they do with the second back. I mean, you'll have a couple things come out of that. They'll give you an indication on what the investment is, whether it's a draft pick or free agency move. Their faith in Charbonnet's health, right? I mean, it's a major knee injury, and it happened really late. It happened in the playoffs. So, I mean, this is devastating, and you may not come back for a while. We've seen it there with Javonte Williams and Breece Hall. I mean, it took them a couple years to get back to where they were as real fantasy assets with that type of major knee injury. So that's the one thing you get really concerned. And then the other thing is, I think if they add it back, based on what I said earlier on Walker, it's going to be a third down pass catching back. So Walker should eat up the goal line. I mean, Charbonnet just happened to be a big dude who you could plunge in to the red zone. Walker's a little slight. I mean, no, he's had some durability issues, but just watch who that second back is carefully. Like, I would want to take Walker, but he has had his share of durability issues, like giving him a high volume. So just see who that is, because I don't think it's going to be George Holani as his preferred backup or complementary back next year. So watch that, and you will get an idea of how you want to draft him. But yeah, I think he's a borderline top 12 running back at this stage. Again, especially if he's going to get a little receiving work out of necessity and the touchdown work that he was missing this year.
Now, with AJ Barner, we mentioned he had a really solid Super Bowl game with 4 receptions, 54 yards, and a touchdown. This year in the regular season, he had the second most receptions on the Seahawks at 52, behind JSN on that team. Now, he was only the tight end 21 in fantasy points per game and half PPR. There was a couple good games there at the end of the year. Some good games mixed in throughout. Very inconsistent though, right? Like there's games he completely disappeared. Other games they needed him. I think he'll be headed into his 3rd NFL season. I think he's an okay late round option if they don't add a bunch of other guys as targets in this offense. But it's going to be hard to rely on him week in and week out. I think even next year.
Yeah, the Seahawks tight end situation, I don't think it's been good since I think there was a year with Jimmy Graham in there, but like you've seen like John Carlson in there, Will Disley. These dudes just keep popping up. And it doesn't matter what offense they run. It's always some complimentary guy. Colby Parkinson was there for a little bit. Noah Fant was there and he didn't do much. So it just seems to be a thing. It doesn't matter who's calling the plays, where they are very fickle with their tight end usage. So look, I do like Barner as a talent. Physically he's good. I mean, I liked him in Michigan and whatnot. So you look at his ability, I think he's a really good player. They can use him in multitude of ways, but I don't think you necessarily get that. And then you have Kubiak headed out, so I don't know if the usage will be the same or they look at him differently in a slightly tweaked offense away from that. So I think one thing's for sure, between Kupp and Barner with JSN, they need to get someone a little bit more legitimate here to stretch the field. I don't think that means splurging on George Pickens to replace DK Metcalf on 1 year delay, but they could go after a very deep receiving class. I mean, Denzel Boston could be sitting there right down the street in Seattle from Washington at their 32nd pick. So some things to look at there. But The one thing I know, Michelle, I'm just going to close on this. Everyone looked at Sam Darnold having a good Super Bowl. He was atrocious in the Super Bowl. He was lucky he didn't throw 3 pick sixes.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's not a fantasy person at all, I don't think, because again, he's not going to give you the big numbers. He doesn't run at all. Like when Chris Collins was talking about his mobility, he said, "What mobility? He's not going to take over the game with
He
mobility."
used to have it. I don't
Yeah,
know.
he had
Yeah, he didn't
some.
run
Yeah,
this
that
year,
one
but
year where he had all
yeah,
those rushing touchdowns for
yeah,
the Panthers. Like, and everyone said he's got more rushing touchdowns than Cam Newton or whatever
yeah.
in this many games as a Panther. So I just can't go there. Like again, if anybody's volatile to come crashing down from where he was not even a reliable QB1, right? He's a matchup based dude. I don't think there's any way I can go there. And like, look, I'm not for Seahawks fans. I'm hoping he's not just a one hit wonder for you, but it's someone I might just stay away from in all kind of fantasy scenarios next year. He was good for me. Don't in Superflex QB leagues, solid starter, but one QB league, no need to touch him.
Yeah, he's a quarterback 28 on average this year. So not a guy you're going to be targeting, especially like the rushing just wasn't there this year at all. 95 rushing yards on the season, 0 rushing touchdowns. So won't be a guy we're looking at for fantasy, but there's a lot of quarterbacks in the league that are good starters. And he obviously showed he can win a Super Bowl. And but they're just not good fantasy options, right? So Sam Darnold will not be ranked highly for us, that's for sure. Let's move on to the Patriots outlook. Drake Maye will be ranked highly for us, but will he be worth his cost? That's what we have to decide right after a quick break. If you ever hired someone who looked good on paper but wasn't the right fit, you know how much of an impact that can have on your business. What you want is candidates who truly match what you're looking for. So trust Indeed sponsored jobs. Hiring Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed sponsors jobs, puts your post at the top of the page, and helps you reach the right candidates faster who will make a real difference. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed are 90% more likely to report a higher than non-sponsored jobs. You get to spend more time interviewing candidates who check all the boxes with less stress, less time, and more results using Indeed sponsored jobs. Listeners of this show get $75 in sponsored job credit to help give your job the premium placement it deserves at Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL. Just go to Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL right now and support the show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions do apply. Hiring, do it the right way with Indeed. All right, to close out today's show, we're going to be talking about the Patriots fantasy outlook for next season. Starting at the top here with Drake Maye, who had a rough playoffs. Like he had such a good regular season. He was tied for the quarterback 2 in average fantasy points per game. He was tied with Matthew Stafford, behind only Josh Allen. He got us a lot of rushing yards, some rushing touchdowns, 31 passing touchdowns as well. He's going to be drafted high. Maybe the bad playoffs will push him down a little bit, which would be good. But right now in consensus rankings, he is the quarterback 2 off boards for 2026, projected quarterback 2, only behind Allen. And he's projected to be a 3rd round pick. That's a bit costly. I mean, I think it would depend greatly on the weapons they bring in, right? Because it can't be Stephon Diggs and Demario Douglas and Kayshon Boutte as his wide receiver 1 still for us to trust taking him this early in drafts.
Yeah, I mean, definitely a lot of his production and fantasy that made him pleasing was his rushing production. And really, in the end, go figure, we're a fantasy podcast. Drake Maye had a decent fantasy game in the end. He had almost 300 yards passing, 2 touchdowns. He led the Patriots in rushing. He actually hit the rushing number that they had on Prize Picks. So it was just like he compiled in the end, right? And that's what you're looking for. How do you get to those numbers that you need in fantasy? And look, we could have done without the 3 turnovers in that game, but overall, he did produce. In the end, it was ugly. He didn't get there in the linear way. It took the 4th quarter to happen. But when we're looking at Drake Maye, he is a good dual threat talent, and this is what makes him appealing. They're up high. Now, it really comes down to how much he can score on the ground. I mean, Jalen Hurts, I think, has probably hit his peak scoring touchdowns. So we could see Josh Allen still staying in the double-digit realm, right? With how much he just can bury opponents. So then you have to look at who are the cheat code quarterbacks that we're looking at. I mean, we don't know what you're going to get from Jaden Daniels. Lamar Jackson is a new system. So then it starts, where do you go? Like, how much is Caleb Williams going to run and also upgrade his scoring from last year? So there's just a lot of question marks coming in here on about a lot of other quarterbacks, especially we talked about Stafford and being a pocket passer and hard to duplicate those numbers. So, look, I bet Drake Maye is still okay. And again, he's going to give you a nice floor every week. I mean, he's going to give you about 30 rushing yards. He got 3 points right way. He's probably going to give you at least a touchdown and a half per game. And look, we know that's going to happen in most games. And I think what we were looking for is to boost his touchdowns to like 35 overall and run a little bit more, and then he'll be just fine to put up the numbers that we've seen.
Yeah, but I do think him going ahead of Lamar Jackson's pretty crazy. I know Lamar had a down year for fantasy. I'd still rather go with him. Burrow would be a hard choice Burrow, you're just worried about injuries, I guess. But like Burrow, will likely throw more touchdowns than May. So I don't know. That would be a hard decision. We're going to have May ranked high. It just depends on if we feel comfortable taking him that high in drafts. Now, Stephon Diggs, you mentioned, the last 4 or 5 games of the season, including the playoffs, all under 45 receiving yards. He just was not involved at all. I think the Patriots have to move on and get better weapons for May, that's for sure. But like even to get someone like really reliable, like a Romeo Doubs or a Juwan Jennings, a guy that's reliable on third down. You mentioned taking a guy early in draft. I think they should do both things. Take a guy early in draft, get a reliable guy in free agency, but definitely need to get May more weapons out there for sure.
Yeah, they'll definitely do that. And Diggs, look, there's a lot of drama now that's developing that we're hearing from the Super Bowl, and he's got the thing hanging over him. That's unfortunate with the off field. So I think, you got to move on from Diggs. He's slowing down. And when you have the ACL very late in your career and you've played a lot, I think you're seeing the effects of that. And look, I don't think they're terrible in some spots. Like, I think I would try to keep Pop Douglas and Kayshon Boutte and like put them in their specific roles. But they can't rely on Mack Hollins. Look, I loved how Mack balled out in that game, but that can't be your top guy. Like, he absolutely cannot. So I think you'll see some upgrades here. Like Hunter Henry, I thought would be a bigger factor. He actually did to get those 5 targets we were looking for. So do they upgrade there? Because you could do that with Kenyon Sadiq if he can fall in the first round out of Oregon. There's some other tight ends that you can also explore. So we'll see what they do. But I think they'll get weapons. They'll change it up here. They really did not have enough reliable guys there, and that Drake Maye missed a lot of them as well.
He did. Now the running backs, just I don't know what to do with this group because Ramondre Stevenson is going to be the lead back as long as he's there. I feel like with Mike Vrabel and that coaching staff, Trey Hendrickson definitely showed sparks and flashes in his rookie season, but was utilized very inconsistently. And really his usage just completely dwindled towards the end of the year. But Stevenson finished as running back 21 and average scoring at 11.6 points per game and half PPR, while Henderson finished as the running back 24 at 11.1. We saw Henderson have some big games when Stevenson did miss time, but it's going to be hard to draft Henderson because people want him to be a thing so bad, right? So he's going to continue to not be like a super cheap cost. And we just don't know if the utilization will be there unless the team were to happen to move on from Stevenson this offseason.
Yeah, it's very like a rudimentary version of what we had at its peak with Jahmyr Gibbs and Dave Montgomery, right? Like, it's kind of flipped, though, and they don't think they're yet trusting Travion Henderson to be a big part of the passing game consistently because they like Stevenson. He's a good, again, little things dude, right? Pass protector, catches a few balls out. That's why he's on the field. Sometimes we just like, hey, why is this guy running and producing the way he wants? But sometimes just having that stability. That's why he got the ball in the playoffs and through the snowstorm. That's what he was the guy that they could trust a little bit more. So he's going to be a factor. He's not going away. We might need a Stevenson injury for Henderson to really break out.
Awesome. Well, that will be it for today's episode. I want to thank you all for tuning in today to Locked On Fantasy Football. We will be back tomorrow to talk about more fantasy goodness. Make sure you subscribe and follow Locked On Fantasy Football so you get all the latest episodes. And if you never miss an episode, the Everydayer Club is built for you. You get our show Monday through Friday, ad-free, plus members-only Discord access and more. Head to lockedonfantasyfootball.supercast.com or check the link in the show notes to join the club. We will be back tomorrow. Talk to you later. Bye, y'all.